6:35, let's go through the papers now, and we've got a real treat for you, because it's the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and Olympian Chris Sakabusi. Good morning,
Stephen. Morning, Isabel.
We've got Dawn waking us up with her bright yellow. We've got your laugh.
There we go.
It's going to get everybody through the Monday morning.
Fabulous.
Fab.
Dawn, let's kick off with a bit of climate, should we? COP27.
Yeah, should we just really cheer people up on this
Yeah.
wet Monday morning? Yeah, this is the front page of the Telegraph, as we all know by now. COP27 is happening in Sharm el-Sheikh, where the great and the good have thrown out there, many in their private jets, to talk about how we're all destroying the climate. And Rishi Sunak decided at the last minute to go out there, because Boris Johnson was basically, shall we be honest?
Yeah.
Anyway, the really good news coming out of this, I'm being ironic by the way, is that number 10 could be forced to pay out to poorer countries hit by global warming disasters. This is basically, we are facing, Rishi Sunak is supposedly saying in his speech today that we are pledging 65.5 million for green technology in poorer countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan and the Maldives, which we do know have suffered appallingly. I mean, Pakistan's had terrible floods, and some of the Maldives are pretty much underwater already, aren't they? These are pledges that were originally made in Glasgow last year in COP26. Pretty much nothing's happened in the previous year. There's a reason we're up to COP27, isn't there, and we're still in a code red climate crisis, because the COPs don't really achieve
They don't do anything, no.
apart from a lot of hot air. So, I mean, this is basically pledging the 65.5 million for green tech in the poorer countries. The problem I think a lot of people watching and listening to this today will have with this is like, yeah, it's fine, in theory, it's perfect. However, we are facing economic meltdown in this country. As we have already discussed, it's 50, 55 billion, 60 billion. It seems to go up every minute, doesn't it? Yeah. A black hole in our finances. People are struggling to pay their bills, to buy food. We have endless strikes. We have this black hole. Taxes are at the highest they've been for 70 years.
And they're going to go up.
And they're going to go up. You're not helping, Stephen. And so a lot of people are going, well, how can we afford to do this? In theory, it should be done, and we know, it helps the climate and the world if we help these poorer countries out. But how can we afford to do it? And
it's a bit like when the oxygen fails on an aeroplane. They always say, put your own mask on first before helping anybody else.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, and the real problem with this is China, India, Canada and Australia are not at COP27. China and India are huge polluters, and Canada and Australia are two of the biggest exporters of oil and coal in the world. So,
what do you reckon, Chris?
Well, what I was thinking initially was when you said they've all flown out to Egypt.
Yeah, Egypt, Sharm el-Sheikh.
When you take it a little bit more seriously, if it really was an emergency and a COP27 after all the 26 have gone, that they would say, you know what, we're going to do this by Zoom. I mean,
it's not impossible. We did it during lockdown.
100%. There's so much very important business that gets done now through electronic media. So you'd really then believe that we have got an emergency and that there is some real serious stuff going on. If they actually met electronically and said, we're going to minimise our carbon footprint and show you the way to go. They don't. They all go down there with all of their entourage.
They'll be having the jolly, let's be honest.
100%.
Sharm el-Sheikh at this time of year, a bit grim. I mean,
and you also, when you said that Rishi Sunak had to go because Boris Johnson was there, which is clear, he had to. The de facto, he's the Prime Minister, and he couldn't allow the former Prime Minister to take all the limelight and to be doing the country's bidding. So.
But again, he should have, because he said originally, and this is where I have a problem with it, he said, I'm not going because there's too much to focus on at home.
Which
is
correct
thing. Right. So the fact he's then done a U-turn on that makes him look weak, doesn't
it? Well, it does, but then again, I think we've seen that, haven't we, in the last sort of year, that our Prime Ministers can say one thing and spin on a diamond and actually go and deliver another. And so it's part of the course. Prime Minister Truss did the same, as did Prime Minister Johnson, said one thing and then actually went and delivered another.
Well, look, I think the word reparations, has got so many connotations, hasn't it?
Yeah.
The official terminology is loss and damage financing to these countries. But the word reparations will instantly, as you say, in the context of everything going on, put people's hackles up, as does the foreign aid budget. Always gets people going, but this is such an unusual front page on the Times, and this is about the billions being spent from the foreign aid budget, but here in the UK. So what are they saying?
So, yeah. So what they are saying is that the foreign aid policies do allow for 50% of the money to be spent on the refugees and the migrants that are actually here because they are foreign people who are here. So they're trying to sort of rearrange the deck chairs and to show some sort of fiscal responsibility and saying that, okay, rather than spend all the money abroad, we're going to be offsetting some of the costs that we, the taxpayer, are paying for these people who are coming in our country. Now, I know people don't like the idea of foreign aid, or many people don't, but it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you do get influence and you do develop other relationships by spending money. It's not as if pure altruistically you're giving your money away. But
for example, China has a big foreign aid budget, not because they've got bleeding hearts, but because they've wanted to take advantage of mineral
deposits.
Yeah, things
yeah,
like that around the
I think some of the challenges with foreign aid is though is when you find yourself spending a lot of money on the continent of India, well, they've got air missions to Mars or whatever it is, space missions and stuff. So I do think it's a good idea, but I can see there's going to be a lot of people not happy with the idea that the foreign aid budget is being spent on immigrants.
Well, it's interesting, though. It reflects exactly what you were reading this out earlier. David Wirral said overseas aid should be postponed for 2 years. The money used to pay for food, accommodation, phones, pocket money, solicitors and translators involved with the Channel migrants.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Dave, they've listened to you, Dave, for the last 20 minutes and they've gone and done it. Meanwhile, the rest of us are all having to fork out the Express looking at tax rises, but they say when it comes to pensioners, the triple lock will not move.
Now, the Express have a very elderly readership, so this has been very, very much one of their big campaigns. They have a petition that 28,000 people have signed to make sure that the pensions triple lock remains in place. And just
28,000 isn't a lot.
No, well, I mean, it's not, but they've only just started it, to be fair.
Okay.
To be fair, they have only just started it. And the triple lock guarantees that state pensions rise by 2.5% earnings or inflation, whichever is higher. That's basically what it is. And look, in theory, again, that foreign aid thing, it's a good idea in principle, but can we afford it? I mean, can we afford anything at the moment? As I said, this is the Express campaign along with Silver Lives, is it? And this is a part of the fiscal plan that's going to be presented on Thursday, November the 17th. Now, the manifesto pledge for the Conservative Party, if we can remember that far back, so much has changed since then, was to keep the pensions triple lock in place, and it is very important. I mean, people have this myth that pensioners are all very, wealthy homeowners, and a lot of pensioners out there are struggling.
30% are millionaire households, though. And when you think of the cost of this policy in terms of, it would essentially mean that they would get their pension increase in line with inflation.
Yeah, but then,
you think where inflation's at compared to, say, nurses who we know are going on strike today, who are going to see
just because they've got, I mean, certainly in the southeast and things where property prices are blooming ridiculous, they may have £1 million, a terraced house that's worth £1 million quid.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Are we saying then that we're forcing pensioners to sell their homes to keep going?
Well, and you can't sell your homes at the moment because of the way things are going, again, with the budget and the stamp duty, etc., etc. You can't afford to sell your home. So a lot of pensioners are, on paper, are very wealthy because they've got very expensive homes. But they can't afford to heat those homes, by the way. So it is, and can we just put another thing straight on this pension? Pensions aren't a benefit, okay? They're not a benefit.
Well, no, but they fall under the benefit
budget. They do fall under the benefit budget, but I mean, I get so annoyed with people saying, oh, pensions are a benefit and we need to cut back. And they're not. People have paid into these pensions. I know they fall under the budget, but...
I was going to say, but the only reason, because actually someone told me off on email a few weeks ago about this, but the reason you have to refer to them as a benefit, I would say, is because when we talk about the size of the benefit budget, the pension takes up like 50% or more of that budget.
Because we are also an ageing population. There are...
But you've got to then consider it as, otherwise you say, well, we're spending how many hundreds of billions on benefits. People go, well, why are all these people on benefits? Well, half of it's pension.
Half of it is pensions. No, I completely get that, but I mean, I think...
I know what you mean. The language doesn't help.
The language doesn't help, and, a lot of people...
My contribution, though, to this debate there is that we've got to be seen to be keeping our promises. If you've made promises to an elderly population that by the time you get to draw on your pension, we make sure that you're right with inflation, you've got to keep your promises, because if you don't keep promises there, then every other promise that you say to young people when they join the workforce at 20 is up for grabs. You recognise they don't mean what they say. So if a society, you say to somebody when they enter the workforce at 20, this is what's going to happen to you when you get to your 60s and 70s, we've got to keep that promise. So that's my real thing about all of this, is that forget all of that about the property rises. We promise that your pension will keep rate of inflation. Make sure it does.
Okay, let us know your thoughts at home as well on this really important issue. We touched on it there, the nurses' strike, Chris, and this is on the front of the Eye this morning, expected to be the biggest ever nursing strike, and warnings that this could have, worrying consequences for A&E.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the nurses.
For sure.
Because they've been put in an impossible situation. There are certain things in the United Kingdom where we can't strike. You'd like to think the nurses would be one of them. Certainly, my time in the military, we knew that we couldn't strike. Firemen and women, you hope they wouldn't be on strike.
So very rare for them to strike.
Yeah, exactly right. So they're in an impossible situation because since the global financial crisis, inflation has run ahead as we've taken care of big business and big industry. It's been the basic working class person who's had to take the brunt of everything while we're taking care of the big institutions, the banks, industry, commerce. But now they're saying a nurse who can look after your mum or ourselves is saying, I can't heat my home and I can't pay for my food, I'm going to food banks. So I do understand we need to be contented on their behalf. Their wages need to compete, so it needs to keep pace with inflation. I hope they don't strike.
Well, they can't keep it in line with this level of inflation, though, can they?
Well, this is the problem, isn't it?
But you see, but you're asking them to take the brunt once again, because they haven't kept pace with inflation since 2008 at least.
No, but then again, it all comes down to the same problem. What do you say then to teachers? What do you say then to doctors? What do you say then to lawyers, barristers who say that they're earning less than baristas in terms of their rate per hour? When it comes to public sector pay, you open up a can of worms, don't you? You treat nurses differently.
But every time there's a crisis, a real crisis, well, not a real crisis, the banking crisis, we found the money.
Yeah.
War in Ukraine, we found the money. COVID, we found the money. So every time there's a real crisis, we find the money. And then this real crisis, we say, I'm not quite sure, we can't find the money.
But the danger is with that, this is where it gets so complicated, doesn't it? But the danger is the crisis is really inflation. And they say, well, if you give everyone, certainly in the public sector, inflation levelling pay rises, then all that actually does is boost inflation.
Yeah.
But it was clear that inflation was going to happen by the time we started doing all that quantitative easing in 2008.
Well,
when in COVID we gave away billions of pounds for people to stay at home, it's clear then that there's going to be flooding the market with money. So all I'm trying to say, if you do that on one hand, then how can you not do this on the other?
But the problem is, Chris, isn't it? And you'll get this, I know, is when you look at nurses is really emotive.
Yes.
Right? It's really emotive.
Yeah.
And so we look at our mothers being in hospital or us being treated or whatever it may be. Whereas politicians need to take a macro view.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah, okay.
And it's how you make the two meet.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've no answer to it. I'd probably sound really harsh by saying, well, you can't do that. But it's like, I'm trying to take a macro view.
Well, in terms of the macro view, I was just going to come in and say that when you've got a nursing sector that are already overworked, there's a problem with retention, there's a problem with too few positions anyway. They're only going to leave more quickly if they're being paid less in real terms for more work.
If the nurses worked to rule, the NHS would collapse.
Yeah.
So if they didn't do the overtime, if they didn't cut down the lunches, if they didn't come in early, if they didn't leave late, it would collapse.
Yeah.
So we are taking advantage of their duty of care to the community and to the job they've done.
I'll tell you what, whilst all this is being sorted out, and whatever you think should happen to pay, if you see a nurse, treat them with respect. Because when I'm type 1 diabetic, I see nurses all the time. And the one thing that they always tell me is the level of abuse they get
Yeah.
from
Wow.
So
patients.
Really?
Yeah, is
Wow.
apparently appalling. So do not lose your patience with a nurse. It's a disgrace. Do your bit to make their lives a little bit easier.
Just in case people are worried, those exempt from taking part in strike action will include any nurse involved in emergency care without which life would be jeopardised or permanent disability would occur. So, you know, those who are sort of like, you know, cancer treatments, things like that, they will be continuing. So, I mean, this is the first time it's ever happened in the history of the Royal College of Nursing. But you know, the starting salary for a nurse is £20,000, just over £20,000 for the work they do and the hours they do. And Isabel's point's entirely right. I mean, we have to do something because they can't afford to carry on working in nursing. They're leaving. We have a shortage. We have a waiting list of nearly 7 million people now on the NHS waiting list. So something has to be done. But again, Stephen, if we had the answers, we could be Prime Minister. Actually, any of us probably could by next week, couldn't we?
It's a revolving door.
Yes.
But we're going to leave it there. Dawn, Chris, it's been a pleasure. We'll have more from these two rays of sunshine for you.
There will be rays of sunshine later on. They will be.
They will be.